Welcome back to Tracing the Sky. So in the last few videos, we've been making a really important transition. Early in the series, our observations were much more casual in the way we talked about them and described them. But more recently, we've been using more precise language, more precise measurements to view the celestial bodies. We've been using azimuth and altitude to describe where a body is in the sky. We've also seen how we can use geometry to better understand what's happening in the solar system. Today, we're going to start another big leap forward. So over the next few videos, we're going to be following one of my favorite astronomers. His name is Aristarchus of Samos. You know you're a big deal when you're of a place, like of Samos. He lived around 300 BC, about 310 to 230 BC. So that's the kind of time range. Just think about how long ago that was and how little technology they had. Now, Aristarchus is one of my favorite astronomers because of what he wants to do. He wants to see if he can figure out the distance from the Earth to the moon and from the Earth to the sun. He's also curious if he can figure out their sizes, how big the sun, the moon are relative to the Earth. Just think about how crazy that is. He doesn't have a rocket ship. He can't just speed off to the moon and read the odometer. He has to figure all of this out without leaving Earth. And following his journey and thought process is such an incredible experience. You get to see his creative genius at work. You get to see how he can apply math and geometry to solve this incredible problem. And one of the most marvelous things is it's not even that complicated. It is genius and very creative, but the math and geometry will be super accessible to you. So I hope you'll join me on this journey. We're going to break it up over a few videos, and I'm going to walk you through this incredible discovery step by step. Okay, so where does Aristarchus start? Well, he realizes something really important about the moon. And so before we dive into his first discovery and realization, we need to revisit some of what we know about the moon and go a little bit deeper into the moon than I did in previous videos. Now, you probably know a lot about the moon already just from the times you've seen it out in the sky. And in our videos, we've also covered a little bit of this. Some of the main things about the moon are that it moves from east to west over the course of a single night, right? We've seen that if I go backwards in time here, we can see it rising in the east. And if I move forwards now, it's following that arc going from east to west. But you probably also know that the moon has another really distinct characteristic. Over the course of time, the amount of moon we see changes. You can see that already a sliver of the moon is no longer visible. We call these the moon phases, the phases of the moon, right? And we know it goes from a full moon and we see progressively less of it until we can't see any of the moon, and then we see it appear again. And it does this about every month or so. It's a little less than a month. So we have these moon phases. Now, what I want to focus on today is to explore a little bit about what the Greeks knew about the moon phases, what they thought was happening with the moon phases. So let's start with one quick demonstration. Here you can see that we have a little bit less than half a moon, and you can see the moon during the day. And you've probably experienced this, right? Generally, we associate the moon with nighttime, but you've probably also seen many times in your life the moon visible during the day as well. And so what I want to draw your attention to is the position of the sun relative to the moon and which part of the moon is lit up. You can see that the sun's on our left and the left side of the moon is lit up. And if I continue over, you can see that as the moon approaches, we can no longer see any of the moon. But what you can see now is at a certain point through the month, as I continue to progress, the moon begins to appear again. But this time, the sliver is on the other side of the moon. You can see this time the sliver is on the other side of the moon. And so the moon, the part of the moon that's illuminated, is based off of where the moon is relative to the sun. So this was one really big piece of evidence that the Greeks used to come to the realization and discovery that the moon phases were being caused by the relative position of the Earth, the sun, and the moon, right? So the moon phases are not just random or accidental. They're dictated based off of where the three celestial bodies are, where the moon, the sun, and the Earth are. So now let's look at a model of this and see how they were visualizing and imagining this happening. Okay, so here we are looking at the sun, the moon, and the earth. And what this is meant to help us understand is how the relative position of the sun and the moon affect what we see on earth. So here you can see a little red dot here. This represents a position on earth. That's us on earth somewhere. And we can move around this world and take a look at what we see. So I just want you to get this kind of perspective. If you're on Earth, you're looking out at the moon and the sun is kind of above you over here. I'll just turn this line of sight on for a second so you can get an idea of what you're seeing. You're seeing this part of the moon. If I give you like a top-down view, you can see that you're seeing the half of the moon that's facing you. Now what I'll show you really quickly, if I zoom out here, is that if I move the sun relative to the Earth, right, but you keep the moon and your position the same, I'll just zoom us in. What you'll be able to see is the part of the moon that's illuminated changes, right? As we move the sun more to the left, more of the moon is facing you. This is kind of like a full moon, versus if I move it closer to the right, you see less of a moon, and you see about half a moon here, and you start to see less of it. And if I continue to move the sun, we start to see the other side of the moon illuminated. In this top right corner, you can kind of see the observer view, what you would see from Earth. I'll link to this model in the video notes so you can play around with this too and have a look at how things move. But the main idea is, based off of where you move the sun, you can see that the part of the Earth that's illuminated and the part of the moon that's illuminated changes. I'll just zoom out a little bit so you can see that in more detail. So again, as I'm moving the sun, you can see that the part of the moon that's illuminated follows the sun, and the side of the moon that's illuminated changes based off of where we are on Earth. So that's a really important idea that Aristarchus started to think about. Now let's see how he was able to use that. So let's look at the first big realization Aristarchus makes. This right now is a full moon. I hope you can see that. When the sun and earth and moon are configured in this way, from your perspective on Earth, you're seeing about a full moon, right? You can see it's 98% lit, so just about a full moon. Now, as we move the sun, let's zoom out a bit. As we move the sun this way, you can see that we're able to see less and less of the moon, all the way until we see a half moon. Okay, so at this point, as the sun, moon are moving, we see exactly half of a moon, right? Half of the moon is illuminated, or the half that's facing us. So I hope you can see that. Let me just turn on our line of sight so you can see. We can see this entire half of the moon, but only part of it is illuminated that's facing up, and it's exactly half of the amount that we see. Now, I'm curious if you can see a particular shape that the Earth, moon, and sun must make in order for us to see this amount of moon, right? It's the most important shape I said that you always want to look out for. Feel free to pause the video and really puzzle over this for a bit. And click on the link in the description to try different configurations. What you'll see is no matter where you put yourself on Earth, no matter where you position the moon and the sun, in order to get exactly 50% of that moon illuminated, you have to have this particular shape. So once you've had a chance to think about this some more, press play and come back and join me. Okay, so you can probably see the shape I'm thinking of. Let me add some lines and see if it stands out at you. First, I'll add this line here from the Earth to the moon. This is from your position on Earth to the moon. Now let's add another line. Let's add this other line from the Earth to the sun. What are these lines? Let me just first explain what these lines are. The red line is the distance from your position to the moon. It's also your line of sight. It's what you can see from where you're standing on Earth to the moon. The purple line is for the sun. So you can see the sun from this position on Earth. And this is your line of sight, but it's also the distance from where you're standing on Earth to the sun. So we have the distance to the moon and the distance to the sun. Well, those are two things Aristarchus cares a lot about. That's what he wants to find, right? Well, let's add one more line. Maybe it's not standing out for you just yet. If we add one more line from the sun to the moon, you're probably seeing the shape. This is a right angle triangle. We know that this is a right angle triangle because we see exactly 50% of the moon. Because this line has to be perpendicular to our line of sight from the Earth. In order to see exactly half of that moon lit up, these two lines have to be perpendicular. And we know from our previous lessons, perpendicular lines mean that there's a 90-degree angle. So we have a right angle triangle here. And we know that there's a lot you can do with that. So Aristarchus realizes this. He realizes that when he sees half of the moon illuminated in the sky, that the Earth, the sun, and the moon are a right angle triangle. And this is a huge piece of information for him. In the next video, I'll start to show you why this is so significant and what he's able to do with this seemingly simple realization. It might look like not a lot, but it's the first big key to unlocking this entire journey. So join me next time and we'll take the next step along his path to figuring out the distance to the sun and the moon. See you next time.